Now, on October 7th last year, Tom Hand's daughter was taken hostage by Hamas after a 50-day nightmare in which he initially believed his daughter had been killed. Tom was reunited with Emily on November 25th. He joins us now. Tom, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Can I start by asking you about Emily? I saw her in the programme. She was interviewed on One Day in October, the Channel 4 programme recently. And I was astonished by how strong she was. How is she doing?
Yeah, she's a amazingly strong little girl. She's only 9. She'll be 10 in November next month. I don't know, her resilience and the resilience of all the hostages that we've received is pretty amazing.
I thought some of the things she said in that programme, she said, like, I should have stayed at home that day. I mean, she just showed wisdom beyond her years when she recounted what had happened. Did she, I suppose she was probably forced to grow up an awful lot during that awful ordeal, was it?
Yeah, a lot of the other parents that have got their kids back have said the maturity level has really increased. They're not children anymore, so to speak.
And that's really sad, isn't it? Because a 9-year-old girl who's soon to be 10 should still be a child, is still a child.
Yeah, she is. And, she's still doing all childish stuff, but she just has this extra level of maturity to it now.
The programme is incredibly powerful. One Day in October, and I was very taken by so many of the things you and your neighbours said, and particularly you spoke about when you were initially wrongly told that Emily was killed, and you said your feeling was one of relief because, as far as you were concerned, the worst thing that could have happened was her being taken as hostage. Just talk to us about your feelings at that time. It must have just been an horrendous experience.
Yeah, well, this isn't the first time that hostages have been taken from Israel. And I know the conditions and treatment that they've received in there. And her being a girl, first of all, and a small child, I did not want her to go through that terror, literally terror, petrified for her life, not knowing what was going to happen to her from one day to the next, what food, what water she was going to get. I mean, they were given smelly water. It was, God knows what it was, from the sewers, God knows. Anyway, I did not want her to go through any of that torture. So in a way, I was very relieved that it was all over for her and for us, the family.
So you began the process of grieving for your daughter, and then you heard, how long was it after that you heard actually that information was incorrect and that Emily maybe, and then later you found out actually is alive?
It was literally 30 days from the 7th of October. We were going to the ceremony, remembering all our dead from our kibbutz and from around the country. We had 100 people killed and 32 taken hostage. So there was a big ceremony one month on. And I was on the way to the ceremony and somebody came up and said, listen, I've met someone who saw Raya, the mother of Emily's friend, and her 2 children being taken away. So it was like, what? Raya? She's only got 1 kid. Oh, of course, that the other kid is Emily. So that was an eyewitness report that she was seen being led away by the Hamas terrorists to a waiting car and then driven off into Gaza.
Did you dare to hope at that stage, or was it too difficult to even contemplate?
Of course, yeah. From 1 minute being in grief, mourning for my daughter and my ex-wife, who was 100%, we knew she was dead. I had to hope that I could get her back. And from being in a very depressed, low state, suddenly the power of the earth came into me, believe it or not, from the ground up. I felt it coming into me. I thought, okay, I've got to get her back. I've got to do everything in my power to get her back. And immediately, within a few days, I had a team together. We came to Ireland, spoke to, the Prime Minister, President, everyone that we could get to speak to put pressure on. Even though they didn't need it, they were already doing everything they could to get their own Irish citizen back, and the rest of the hostages, I presume. Ken, it was the driving force to get her back. It was the only thing I had left.
Yeah, of course. Look, I'm very conscious this is enormously painful for you, but can I ask you that moment when you were reunited with Emily, is it possible to put into words your feelings at that moment?
Ecstatic, disbelief. If you've seen the interview, the clip of when she's handed over to me, I didn't know what I was saying. It was,
of course.
She has many nicknames. Emily, Emush. I think I was just saying mush, 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 mush.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. I was beyond myself.
Of course. Not ridiculous at all. Just a parent being reunited with their child. It was I thought it was incredibly moving, incredibly natural.
It was unbelievable because anything could have gone wrong from the moment that she was put on the list for release until her release. It's like 24 hours. And, these deals, negotiations, either side can screw it up in a second. So until I saw her little blue eyes, I didn't believe it. I had to keep myself just hoping.
I was also very taken by something else you said on the programme one day in October. You said you were advised by therapists not to interrogate or investigate, I think were the words you used, just to let Emily tell things in her own time. Obviously very difficult to navigate as a father, but you also spoke about some of the things that over time and even quite recently she has told you.
Yeah, the most recent thing was we lived in the Dead Sea. We were refugees in the Dead Sea for 11 months. We're now in a better place. We're still refugees, but just on the way back in the car, she just came out with, Abba, I saw lots of dead bodies when I was being taken away. And these are people that she knows, like by sight. Personally, people that she knew shot dead on the side of the road where the Hamas didn't have enough cars to take them away. So they just shot them at the side of the road. And she saw that. She saw lots of dead bodies, which is, for a 9-year-old kid, she was 8. She was 8 at the time. To see is, I don't know how she survives mentally.
Yeah, it is unthinkable. I think I read somewhere else you saying that she's doing very well, but she won't go inside without you. Is that inside a house without you? Is that what you meant by that? Is that because of the experience that she was obviously in a separate house, that she was staying with a pal that night, that awful night when she was abducted?
Yeah, it's sort of a strange thing. You would think she'd feel more at home, safe, secure, unafraid in our own house, and more afraid of being outside. But it's the total opposite. She's very happy outside. She goes out at night on a bicycle, does little trips with her friends. But in the house, she won't even go for a shower without me sitting outside the door. She won't sometimes even go to the toilet until I'm outside the door. It's an association with being captured from a house, I presume.
Of course, it's awful, in that she understandably has those fears, given she is so young. Um, she has been through an awful ordeal. You have been through an awful ordeal. You spoke about your ex-wife. You also you also spoke about your. I mean, you lost so many of people you loved. Your really close neighbours. Like, how are you doing? How are you coping with the trauma of that?
I'm amazingly good because I have Emily back. My job as a parent is to give her strength, and in doing so, she gives me so much strength back. Just seeing her happy, seeing her being sociable with her friends. She could have come back so much more broken physically and, more importantly, mentally.
So you draw strength from each other, and I can understand that as a parent. I can't imagine what you're going through, but I can understand as a parent that you just want to be strong for her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I have to be strong for my other older two kids that are still grieving for their mother.
Of course, of course. Um, can I ask you something else you said in the programme? You were saying before 7th of October, you didn't have a worry in the world. And then you kind of added as a sort of an afterthought, well, apart from the missiles. Can I ask you what you found so appealing about living in the kibbutz? What was it that attracted you there? What was it that made you stay for so long?
Well, yeah, okay. I only signed up for 3 months to be a volunteer. And, the first day, beautiful sunshine. You come from England, Ireland. It's pretty much grey skies, no summers, but this
Yeah.
was fantastic. That was the first thing, the weather. Then I found out that it was a socialist system. Like, everyone works for the good of each other. Everyone earns exactly the same amount of money. It's like it's socialism at work. It's unheard of. Um, the people were beautiful. They're just, wow, so kind, welcoming. And then I met Narkis, my wife, my ex-wife. Had two beautiful kids. It was idyllic, paradise. The bombs, the rockets, they started in 2007 after the Hamas came into power. And so, yeah, for 20 odd years, just bombardment of rockets most days and certainly at the weekends.
And yet for you, it was still heaven on earth. It was still where you wanted to be.
Oh, God, yeah. At first, we had no bomb shelters whatsoever. And luckily, after a while, the government gave every single house, apartment, flat a bomb shelter. And so we've only got 11 seconds siren to get to somewhere of safety, whereas before you just hid behind a wall or something. You could die easily. But once we had bomb shelters, we knew within 11 seconds we could be in safety. So a lot of the terror was gone. Thank God.
You've said also that you'd like to go back and live there one day.
Mhm.
Explain to us why is it so important for you to return?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, it's home. It's been my home for over 30 years. Um, all the close friends and people that I know have come from there. We all want to go. Most of us want to go back. 75% are willing to go back. Um, that's one thing. This, it's paradise. I want to go back to paradise, even with the rockets. The other thing is if the people of the south, all the kibbutz the kibbutz people, the people from the towns, the whole area of the south. If we don't go back, even though Hamas aren't physically there, they've won that piece of land. They've claimed it, and I'll be damned if that's going to happen. I'm going home.
And if this isn't too intrusive a question, would Emily go back? Would she live there, do you think?
So far, so good. Yeah, we've paid. We've gone back to the kibbutz just immediately after we got her back. Just she wanted to go back. She wanted to see the devastation. She wanted to see what was left. More was the point. She wanted to visit the house that she was taken from, Raya's house. She wanted to see Narcissus' house. She wanted to see what was left of my house. And she wasn't afraid. She came out thinking, okay, I could go back here. And even recently she said, okay, I would love to spend the night there just to get the feeling of what it feels like at night, because it's a different situation altogether at night.
Sure. She's a remarkable girl. I recall at the time when you thought you had lost Emily, I recall you saying that you never got the chance to bring Emily to Ireland. Is that something you would still like to do at some point?
Oh God, yes. That's definitely on the cards. Yeah. Probably in one of the school holidays, we'll do a trip to England, where most of my family is, and then on to Ireland, where a lot of my cousins are still there. Yeah, it'd be great to show her everything.
Do you feel the Israeli state abandoned you that day? One of your neighbours on that programme one day in October said they felt that they had been abandoned for 12 hours. Do you feel failed by the Israeli state?
Yes, for sure. The country is a very small country. I can drive from the very, very south in Eilat to the very, very north in 6 hours by car. So I don't see what reason they took so long to get to save us. Even though the Hamas had blocked all the roads, it took a very, very, very long time for them to come and save us. If they had got there sooner, there would have been much less of a massacre. There would have been less people dead. There would have been less people kidnapped. Yeah, it was a massive failure by the government and the army.
It was also really interesting and very poignant to hear the different views of your neighbours in the kibbutz on the future. And one of your neighbours, I can't remember which one of them, said, look, it's them or us. It better be us in relation to the Palestinians. But another one of your neighbours was more optimistic, saying peace was always possible. Can I ask you, where do you stand?
Wow, that's a multi-question. All right, yeah, that was Abidar, who said it's them or us. He was in his bomb shelter that day. They shot his wife through the door, the bomb shelter door. They killed his son through the door, and he lost a leg, half a leg.
He spoke with extraordinary dignity in the programme.
Oh my God, he's a gever. He's a man. He's a man. And can you imagine and he saw them die. He saw his own wife and his own child bleed out that day. So you can imagine, yes, it's them or us now. That's one part of the answer. The other person, we're all different here.
Of course.
We were peace-loving people on the kibbutz. We had so many people that helped the people of Gaza. We made collections every year for the people of Gaza. We wanted peace. We hoped for peace. But after what they've done to us that day, how can we hope for peace when they've said we will do it again and again and again? They were brutal. It was a brutal slaughter. How on earth can you hope for peace when that's your neighbor and that's what they're saying?
And it was also very striking in the programme, Tom, that like I think you and others in the kibbutz were saying you had very close ties with people from Gaza. They lived amongst you. You were friends with them. You were saying how secular the kibbutz was before the attack. Maybe this is a silly question to ask, but is that gone forever now, do you think?
For me, yes. I can't answer for other people. People are more hopeful than I am, but after what I've gone through, what I've seen, I have no hope for peace. And I'll give you the example, to be honest. We handed over Gaza in 2005. We dragged families, men, women, and children, screaming from their beautiful homes that they'd built in Gaza. There wasn't a soldier, there wasn't a Jew. Even the graveyards, we dug up the bones of Jews. There wasn't a single bit of Judaism in Gaza. And they could have, with the billions that have been poured into that little strip of land, they could have made it a better paradise than anything that we've got in Israel. But they chose a different direction. They chose to build under instead of up. They have no care for their own people, their own population. They wouldn't even let the civilians down into their tunnels to be safe. They wanted civilian casualties. That's their modus operandi. It looks good for them. It gets them sympathy, and the world just doesn't understand it. And I cannot understand why not.
And I totally understand why you would feel that, and given everything you've been through, you were very angry in June with Ireland and with the Irish government's formal recognition of the state of Palestine. Do you still feel that way? Do you still have that anger towards Ireland for recognising the Palestinian state?
Yeah, it's not anger. It's more disappointment. It's, for me as an Irishman, it's shameful that after what had happened on that day, what they did to us, basically by Ireland, Norway, and Spain, they rewarded them. They literally rewarded them for their slaughter, for their behavior, for their non-acceptance of the state of Israel. You know, from the river to the sea means the obliteration of every Jew from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. They don't want a two-state solution. They're saying it. They're saying it, and they say it again and again. It's in their papers of the Hamas. They don't want peace. All this two-state solution is just a cloud. They don't want it. They've shown they don't want it. They could have made a small state in Gaza. But what did they do with it? Nothing. They made it a military zone to fire rockets, thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets at us. Is that an indication of somebody who wants peace? It's not resistance. It's pure terror.
Are you in contact, and we've spoken about your desire to go back and live in the Berai kibbutz? I'm presuming you're still in contact with many of your neighbours who live there.
Well, yeah, from being a refugee in the hotels in the Dead Sea, we are now close to Beersheba, the middle of the country. We live as a community again. They've built temporary housing for us, which is great. We have, a semblance of normal life, and there are at least 100, possibly even 200 now have gone back to live in Be'eri. Obviously, people without children, people who are strong enough to go back and face the continuous bombs in Kibbutz Be'eri. And we hope to join them. It'll take 2 or 3 years. The kibbutz is still being demolished, like all the houses that were irreparably damaged are still just being demolished. We haven't really started the rebuild yet. So it's going to take, I'd say, at least 3 years.
Despite everything that has happened, despite so much trauma, so much loss, so much hurt, you seem to retain a sense of, one of your neighbours described it, that day in October as being like the end of the world. You somehow managed to retain some kind of hope for the future. I'm sensing, is that right?
Yeah, of course, there's hope. First of all, no matter how many times Israel, the Jews, are attacked, it actually reunites the country. Whereas before the 7th, the country was in quite a turmoil with politics and democracy and all sorts of stuff. There was massive demonstrations. That's all finished. Their attack has reunited the country. We are more solid than ever. That's hopeful. You've always got to hope for peace. I can't personally see it ever happening, but you always hope that your children and your children's children will one day see peace with democracy. It can only be done by democracy. Weapons of war will never achieve peace. It never has done. But yeah, we pray for peace. We really do. We prayed for peace before the 7th. It's a bit harder to hope for peace now.